We'd like to call to order the City Council meeting of the City of Palo Alto for August 10th, 2022. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Burt.
Here.
Councilmember Cormack. Here. Councilmember Du Bois.
Here.
Councilmember Filseth.
Here.
Vice Mayor Ku. Here. Councilmember Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Tanaka. For the record, 6 present.
Thank you. And our first item is public comment, where members of the public can speak on items that are not otherwise on the agenda. And do we have any members of the public who wish to speak? Okay. We have one speaker at this time, Aram James. Welcome. You're ready to begin.
Okay, so Molly, stop and to the city clerk. I'm making a public records request for any and all details, I should say any and all documents regarding the current status of the Palo Alto Police Department's K-9 unit. I'm told, now again, I believe this is an individual, it's a reliable source, that a K-9 named Belko was recently retired, that Nick Enberg, who was the notorious dog handler in the Joel Aleo matter, has been removed from the K-9 unit, and that the second K-9 handler, Julie Tannick, is possibly no longer working with the Palo Alto Police Department or on long-term disability. And the information I have is that, at least for now, and I'm hoping permanently, there is no functioning K-9 unit. So I'd like any and all documents reflecting on that issue. Do we have a K-9 unit or don't we? It would be a savings of about $500,000 if we don't, just for the cost of the K-9 unit, to say nothing about the lawsuits. However, maybe the chief wanted to roll this out as a second reform. So I think it would be wise also for the press to simply ask Chief Bender, congratulations again on your appointment, regarding whether the K-9 unit has been dismantled. Interestingly enough, in that regard, when the Asian Law Alliance and a group of the Coalition for Justice and Accountability, NAACP, held a sheriff's debate during the primaries, Robert Johnson seemed to suggest that and you can look at the debates yourself, I'm happy to send it to you, seems to suggest that K-9 unit is unnecessary in Palo Alto. And of course, I'm hopeful that we can end the use of K-9 units for attacking human beings across this country. I'm going to be working on that. It's a big lift, but with other people, of course. So I'd like to know that. And I will talk later about the closed door session, about who I do and don't think should get raises. And I just wanted to mention, I thought the businessmen that were here were treated very, very poorly. And I don't say that often about you, Mayor Burt, but I would have gone, if I would have been in their place, I would have been Mark Berman on steroids. It would have been F words. It would have been MF words. It would have been MFing words. And I would have said, who in the heck are you to tell me that I'm not negotiating in good faith? And they weren't on the witness stand. They weren't under oath. And, for a man of your stature, it was a poor bullying display. Thank you. And
that concludes that item. We now actually have an agenda change, which is to move the closed session item at this time, to be followed by item AA1, which is the discussion of the November ballot measures, at approximately 7:30. And so I would take a motion to go into closed session.
Second.
That's motion by Councilmember Filseth, second by Councilmember Cormack. And we take public comment on prior to closed session, correct? Yes. So if there are any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, which is a closed session on public employee performance evaluations, of the city. It's listed as the city attorney and city clerk, but it's actually tonight focused on the city attorney and the city. I'm sorry, it's listed as the city manager, city attorney, and city clerk, but tonight is only the city attorney and city clerk. So do we have any members of the public wish to speak? One member, Aram James, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought Mr. Shikata was one of the parties to be considered, and so there I'm not going to go there. I've already advocated that he be fired for his lack of transparency on lots of levels. But as far as Molly Stump goes, I have never seen Molly once speak down to a member of the city council, condescend to a member of the city council. In all the years that she's worked, she can be very tough as nails. We don't always agree on legal issues, but certainly I would give Molly Ed Shikata's salary. And, you know, if you're not going to fire Shikata, then at least reduce his salary to what Molly is getting. She is a very deserving public employee. I can't tell you, as a lawyer myself, I've watched her under pressure. She's always there with answers and details. So why don't you give her the $400,000 plus and give her $1 million for to invest in a home in Palo Alto if she wants to live here? That would be a much better use of our money than the money that you've thrown away on Ed Shikata, including a huge severance standard. I don't know enough about the clerk at this point to say whether I agree or don't agree with a raise. The only concern, and it's just a minor criticism, with our prior clerk, Beth, and I'm forgetting, it's terrible at this point, but it's what happens when you get my age, I guess. I'm forgetting Beth's last name, but when I would email her during city council sessions to say, hey, what's up? Why can't I get in on Zoom? Or, you know, I'm having a problem. She would always get back to me. She was remarkable. So I don't know whether it's just because the clerk is new here to Palo Alto. I know she's been a clerk for many years in other places, but I would appreciate it. For instance, Monday, I thought, you know, I wasn't going to be able to get into Zoom, and it turned out, and I emailed the clerk, and it turned out the meeting was going to be 10 or 12 minutes late. And it would have been really nice to have the clerk just say, hey, Aram, Mr. James, whatever you want to refer to me as, we're just running late. That would have been very helpful. So that's my only critique. It's a very minor one. And that's all I have to say on the closed session. Give Molly the raise she deserves. Take the money from Shikata. Thank you very much.
And that concludes this item. So we will now vote on whether going into closed session.
Councilmember Du Bois?
Yep.
Councilmember Stone?
Yes.
Councilmember Cormac?
Yes.
Mayor Burt?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ku?
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka?
Yes.
Councilmember Filsa?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. So we will now go into closed session. item, and we have no reportable actions. So we will now return to action item AA1, which is discussion of the November ballot initiatives and related resolutions. And Mr. City Manager, would you like to start off, and then the ad hoc can wade in with any supplemental comments?
Yes.
And then we can.
Thank you, Mayor. I think
Open it
we're
up.
trying to figure out the audio here. We've got a little bit of an echo going on, but also I think our staff is still gathering. So I'll get us started, and hopefully staff will join us along the way. Could I ask the City Clerk's assistance in PowerPoint slide? Okay, thank you. Let's go forward to the next slide. So perhaps it's hard to personally think of it as the last 48 hours, but it's something less than that. As the council left off on Monday, the ad hoc committee and business coalition representatives engaged. My gosh, this is only Wednesday. Yesterday in a mediation effort. And that effort was quite extensive and quite frankly, I think very, very illuminating to all parties in drawing out interests as well as areas of flexibility. Now, unfortunately, the mediation effort yesterday was not successful. So at the end of the day, all parties left and had concluded that there was a gap that was yet to be addressed, and we were prepared to report that no progress had been made. So that said, today, to continue that conversation, staff has had a number of follow-up conversations to look at taking one incremental additional step, actually a very small step from where the ad hoc had left off yesterday. And so this evening, we've got a series of slides that will describe some of the particulars there. Before I get into the details, and I think what we'll do here is I'm going to provide a brief overview of what we have in front of you this evening as a possibility for the council's consideration. And perhaps the council may want to discuss that before we dive into more particulars, because we, as you've seen, have a lot of detail on the specifics that when you're ready, we can get to.
No. Just if before you proceed on that, if I could add a little bit on the ad hoc reporting. Well, thank you. And so we had an extensive effort at mediation yesterday, led by former Mayor Larry Klein, who has a strong professional background in this. And I think all the parties felt that he did a very strong job facilitating this. And I just clarify that we had significant progress in the mediation on a whole series of remaining issues. And the one area that we came very close to agreement on and did not quite was on the actual rate itself, but both parties had significantly narrowed their differences through the mediation. But it wasn't, as the city manager said, it wasn't far enough to come to agreement, and that's where we left off. And I just wanted to kind of add that context. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, let's get back to the slide then. Oh, let's go back one, please. So I want to provide the context that what we will discuss or what I will present here is actually a proposal that will allow both the business tax as well as the gas transfer to proceed as the council has discussed without opposition from the business coalition. And so, sorry, let's go back to that one, previous one. And in so doing, that proposal allows us to address a variety of issues. As the council has discussed, the business tax itself is focused on public safety, housing, and transportation, while at the same time, with the inclusion of the gas transfer, this allows the city to continue advancing our sustainability efforts, most notably electrification. And we can talk a little more detail about that as needed, but also recognizes the ability to continue the restoration of city services beyond the next 2 years. As the council is well aware, in this year's budget, we adopted a 2-year strategy that used one-time funds in order to restore services for the next 2 years, but then again, absent additional funding, those services restored would need to be curtailed. So next slide, please. All right, so also as a bit of context, since I know that we've been talking quite a bit about the specifics of the business tax components, I believe it might be important and helpful to take a step back and go back to what I'll refer to as Economic Development 101, and something of a refresher on the local economy and how interdependent various components of our economy are, both for the vitality of the community in general, but also specifically for city finances. So just a few bullets here. One, to acknowledge and recognize that I think we all experience that a robust business environment does enable, in a variety of ways, a broad range of services for residents, both in terms of the services provided by the city that are funded through tax revenues, but also by virtue of the market that is created by commuters, by visitors that are brought by business, and certainly by our institutions, our educational as well as medical institutions, all of which contribute visitors that are customers for our local businesses. And that small businesses depend on these other businesses as well as residents for these customers. And as such, we have this virtuous cycle that we in Palo Alto enjoy, quite frankly, more than most communities in terms of the benefits that are generated as a result of this economic activity. Larger businesses in particular bring visitors that stay in our hotels, whether it be for business meetings or for other events that relate to the workforce and the increasingly mobile workforce in a post-pandemic conditions, and that there are revenues associated with that, as well as revenues associated with the utilities revenues, roughly 50% of which, in the case of the gas utility, are generated by business, and roughly 70% of which are generated by business in the case of the electric utility. And that those also translate into revenues that allow the city to provide services for the community. Next slide, please. All right, so based on that, and with the mayor's comments in terms of where the ad hoc left off, that we have to present to you this evening is a proposal that reflects a monthly rate of 7.5 cents, or as you see here, $0.75 per square foot per month. For all non-exempt businesses over 10,000 square feet. So a small change from the figures that have been discussed over the last few meetings. It reflects an annual cap of $500,000 annually for any single payer, which I believe it's accurate to say would be the highest cap of any business tax in Silicon Valley. It reflects a flat 2.5 increase, basically a CPI increase or escalator, 2.5% escalator each year to be applied beginning a future fiscal year here. And again, this as an alternative to CPI provides greater certainty in terms of the cost that will be associated for those who are paying, but also certainty in terms of our revenues going forward. Fourth, there is some terminology for commitment to annual reporting of proceeds and expenditures that would be reflected in the ordinance. And then finally, we also have some minor clerical corrections to the ordinance that were inadvertently lost in some of the version changes that have happened over the last few months. Next slide, please. Oh, well, before we go to that, sorry, that the net revenue is shown here on the left is for the business tax itself, $9.6 million, our current estimate, as it would be generated with this layout. Next slide, please. Also, we have, and this was discussed previously, so I won't go through this in detail, the affirmation of the natural gas transfer that would generate an additional $7 million. Although, again, as we've been talking about, it varies. When we've also been describing this as a net $4 million over existing revenue streams. Next slide, please. And you've also seen this previously in terms of the recommendation that was approved by council on Monday with the exemptions that would also apply to this latest alternative that is being presented this evening. Next slide, please. All right, and then finally, to translate this new proposal in terms of the services and categories of services that would be enabled through the funding provided through the combination of the business tax as well as the gas transfer. That includes public safety at roughly $5.2 million, which again is a combination of the two revenue sources, which provides the funding needed for services such as the new PERT, Psychological Emergency Response Team, as well as restoration of ambulance services and investigation services. The train crossing safety at roughly $3.2 million annually, which in terms of, if put in terms of matching funds for grade separation, and certainly to the extent that the city were able to finance these as projects come together, that could provide the funding for at least one actual grade crossing itself, grade separation itself. Affordable housing and the amount of $3.2 million per year that would support the city's regional housing needs assessment goals, equivalent to 2 affordable housing projects akin to Wilton Court, or annually providing a production rate of 3 to 10 affordable housing units per year. And then finally, other service restorations on the order of $2 million, again, largely through the gas transfer proposal that would enable continuing services such as the arts, the Junior Museum and Zoo, theater, library hours, and planning staff. So I believe that's our last slide. And so with that, return it to you, Mr. Mayor, and certainly welcome in council comments, or I know we have members of the business community that are also prepared to address the council.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the one thing that I'd add is that I think we can now, we were bound on confidentiality on the mediation, but with this agreement, we can share that, frankly, consistent with what was discussed at the last council meeting, the rate that the ad hoc was willing to support was at the 8 cents rate. And so in the end, we have a proposal that is very close to what the ad hoc was willing to do, but very slightly below it. Maybe staff can even clarify the dollar difference of that half cent. And out of fairness, both sides had to come toward the center to come to an agreement. And each side strongly believed that their initial positions were correct. strongly defensible. We certainly believe that in our position. And we respect that the other side felt equally strong in their positions. And I think all parties in the negotiation recognize that that a battle over this, however it might come out, with either the proponents being victorious or the opponents being victorious, there would be real damage that would occur and real risk that would occur. There would be, each side faced a risk that they would get something very different from what they were looking for. We faced a real risk that we would get nothing and have some very significant impacts on both our continuation of restored services and the very important things that we want to do going forward, that our community wants us to do, and that we must do on behalf of the community, and affordable housing and our transportation, and particularly our grade separations. And then, as city manager really laid out, the critical public safety services that we have stuck our necks out and restored, but we're relying on these measures to be able to continue past 2 years from now. I do want to also note that as the council had supported previously, this tax doesn't even begin until 2024 and is not fully implemented until 2025. Is correct on the structure now. And so one of the concerns on the timing is really addressed by those measures. I mean, we're more than 2 years out from a full implementation of a tax that is more modest than we had originally hoped for. But in that sense, it's also one that reduces concerns over uncertainty in the economy. And it was that pushing it out, and the compromises are such that we now have a tax that we'll hear from the Business Coalition leadership, I think, in public comments. But from what the city manager indicated, we're hoping to hear that they will have no opposition to the tax. And I think that that's really a big step from where we've been. I do want to commend the city manager for not giving up and keeping the door ajar from early this morning and until about a half hour ago, as I understand it. And somewhere in between there was probably a coffee break. Before hearing from members of the public, did any other members of the ad hoc wish to add anything? We'll get into the full discussion, and then we'll hear from the public, and then return to the council for full discussion. Councilmember Du Bois?
Yeah. I mean, you revealed some of the mediation, saying that the ad hoc was willing to go to 8 cents. Just want to clarify, I was not. My line was at 9 cents with the 3% escalator. And again, we've talked a lot about the value of the tax for a single year. But one thing I think we need to consider is the value over 30 years. And the escalator is a huge impact. The difference between CPI, 2%, 2.5%, 3% is quite large. So I just want to clarify that it wasn't the whole ad hoc.
Okay, so now we can proceed to members of the public who wish to speak. So I see we have some form of a pseudonym in the first speaker. Is that correct? Oh, okay. welcome cow.
Thank you, thank you. Let me just get the, sorry.
Are you wishing to speak?
This is the story told to you by the cow and Arden Michael Blum. The story goes something like this. Now, in simple words, that cow is not happy. In fact, here's some more. Now, here's the metaphor. We are now being treated, the business community of Palo Alto, California, as if we were cows. So we have to act up and we have to stand strong. And as a cow, the way that you're treating us, we have to say no taxation, because you see us as sheep and cows, and you're going to put a tax onto us in the middle of recovery from a pandemic. That's not fair. Wait 3 years. Wait 3 years before you tax the business community. Don't treat us like sheep and cows to pay for your expenses. Wait 3 years. Now more from the cow. Thank you for your attention. Have a good one, y'all.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nadia Nyack, to be followed by Aram James. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Nadia Nyack, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of a coalition of Palo Altans that have been working on the business tax measure. We've pulled together a great team, and we're looking forward to working to get funding for public safety and affordable housing and services for the unhoused, and improve track safety and fund grade separations. We've been working for the last month and a half, and we've been anxiously awaiting tonight's decision. I'm excited to see staff's proposal. From what you've just revealed this evening, it sounds like we are so close. And I just want to say that a deal, I think, would be ideal. We are one Palo Alto, and it would really, I think you've canvassed the community enough. You heard about all the priorities. We've been through this. People are excited. I spent time at the farmers market, as I've mentioned, and people are ready to be able to fund these priorities that you guys have all identified. And I think it would be really meaningful to be able to come together as a community. And I wanted to say tonight to those that might be listening at home, if you care about police and fire and 911 service, or about building all different levels of affordable housing, or about making our Caltrain crossings safer, please consider working with our grassroots committee. Unfortunately, I don't have a website to announce tonight yet, but we'll be posting something soon. And to those neighbors who get, sometimes it's hard to focus on local issues when we have so much national stuff that keeps drawing our attention. I mean, just in the 48 hours, and you guys have been negotiating, the world has blown up in other places. But to those who want to do something close to home, this is something you can volunteer on and feel good about and work on building your community. And so I really hope that tonight we're able to put something together that will not be opposed by our business community, and we can work to build good stuff. And I would just say that I'm excited to hear that this tax would actually be phased in 3 to 4 years. So the cows shouldn't worry. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Aram James, to be followed by Liz Gardner. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you said, I believe it was you, Mr. Mayor, that you hope that the business community doesn't oppose this. And I have a friend that says, hope shows up only when there are no possibilities. I don't know whether that applies or not, but it seems to me that council's time would have been better spent trying to explain why you want a business tax, gas tax, to the public, rather than to a recalcitrant business community that obviously won't even promise that they won't oppose this tax that won't even go into effect apparently for 2 or 3 years when we need monies for affordable housing now. We need money for the police, law enforcement. I think we have enough. We've overspent. I think Andrew Binder can do a good job with what he's got now, except I would agree to more team members in the police department and less police officers that engage in police brutality. And I think Andrew can, make certain that those officers that have this still have a propensity for engaging in disproportionate racial policing in Palo Alto and police brutality, that he can make those folks disappear. It may not happen immediately, but he can do that. But, I really, really think that you all could have spent this time, like I said, laser light communicating to the public, the community that needs to pass the business tax. I'm ambivalent and I have questions on the gas tax because I think it's already tied up in litigation. So I made those points last night. I won't repeat them, but I think you should forget about the business community. Let them do their thing. If they want to spend all their money to do that, then speak to that. We've seen campaigns where people have spent a lot of money and they don't win when the other side gets out there and promotes their cause. And the cause, why should we have to wait 2 to 3 years when the needs are now? So I think you all have been taken in if you put that lame proposal on the ballot. Put a real proposal that says we're going to tax the businesses. If you don't like it, move out of town, but you're going to find that there's needs and taxation in other places as well. So please, do the right thing. Take this lame proposal off the table and put a real business tax in here that doesn't compromise. It looks like Tom Du Bois was at least moving in that direction. We need the rest of you to do that. Okay. Thanks a lot. Good night.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Liz Gardner, to be followed by Dan Kostenbauder. Welcome.
Hi, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for this special meeting tonight. My name is Liz Gardner, and I wanted to speak on the 3 main reasons why a business tax is so necessary. One is public safety. My son was held up at knife point in this town, riding his bike. It was a very scary situation, and the amount of money that was spent for public safety to incarcerate or arrest a very sorry, sad soul. That is one reason. The second reason is housing. My family, yes, we are in subsidized housing, but the rents are very high and we're suffering under substandard living. The other reason is sustainability and transit. It's still cheaper for me, even at these high gas prices, to drive to my job rather than taking the train. And the train station is a 1 block from my job. So a business tax, I'm asking, are we a city of innovation or more like that of a city of Oroville, who constructed a faulty dam, the largest earth dam in the USA? Metaphorically, our city's economic dam is just about to split. With the business tax, a tax all other 9 Bay Area cities are paying. This is to stem this tide from a total breach or break. It is critical that the very large 2% of our businesses pay their way. There are too many people, too many small enterprises suffering and scraping by, not only from the pandemic yet, but this has been building for decades, I'd say 40 years. It's time that the crown jewel PA of the tech revolution pay back their profits and proceeds from those who have helped grow this industry to an international monetary staple that is stripping, yes, us, the very population that has helped grow this industry. Are we followers or leaders of the big tech thank you so much for having, again, this special presentation tonight. I really, really hope that this is past. It's far past due. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dan Kostenbauer, to be followed by Charlie Whiteants. Welcome.
Mayor Burt and members of the council, my name is Dan Kostenbauer. I'm the Vice President for Tax Policy of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. The Leadership Group is part of the Palo Alto Community and Business Alliance, which is composed of concerned citizens and local businesses. As representatives of the Alliance, Charlie Whiteants of the Palo Alto Chamber of Commerce and I engaged in a mediation session yesterday with the Council Ad Hoc Committee and City Manager to see if we could reach an agreement with respect to the proposed business tax. We were not able to do so, but both sides did move closer to agreement. We negotiated in good faith and offered increases in the tax rate and application of the escalator to the proposed cap. Today, the city manager proposed an alternative measure that was between the Alliance and Ad Hoc Committee positions yesterday on a couple of points. The proposed tax rate would be 90 cents per square foot per year, and the tax on any one business would be capped at $500,000 per year. An annual escalator of 2.5% would apply to both the rate and the cap. There would also be a financial transparency provision that will enable the public to understand how the tax revenue is spent in the future. Our Alliance considered today's compromise proposal very carefully. After analysis and deliberation, members of my organization, the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, were united in dropping our opposition to this business tax measure. We worked with our major partner in the Alliance, the Palo Alto Chamber of Commerce, and are able to join together in agreement not to oppose the proposed business tax. It has been a long journey, but our Alliance will not stand in the way of this opportunity for Palo Alto to finally have a business tax. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Charlie Whiteants. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, and city staff. I would start by acknowledging the very hard work of all sides during this process of the business community, the council members, the city staff, and others that have really that have put a great deal of effort into this, especially over the last 2 days, as it was mentioned with the mediation session yesterday and today, where the all sides came together to get to where we are right now. So with that said, I would like to say on behalf of the Chamber Board of Directors that we are aligned with the Business Coalition and we will remain neutral and drop opposition to the business license tax as staff proposed today in Attachment A. And so again, I want to acknowledge the hard work of everyone and thank you for this session and for this time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Adina Levin, to be followed by Winter Dellenbach. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. Adina Levin with Friends of Caltrain. As an organization, we have supported multiple transportation-related ballot measures over time, including local business taxes as well as county and agency taxes. And in general, we very much support public funding for public transportation as well as affordable housing that meets the needs of the community. And we are very, very glad to see that the agreement that has been negotiated and reached in order to enable a measure to come on the ballot that will not face opposition. As the polling has showed, this is a measure that has the potential to pass and to really deliver very important needs for the community. But the polling also showed that it is close, and therefore the ability to go out and provide information to members of the community about what the benefits are in order to be able to reach that level of passage, is something that is going to take work, and it's going to take work from many members of the community working together, and doing that communication without opposition is a job that is going to be much, much, much easier than in the face of opposing messages. Polling, typically shows that in the face of opposition messages, support drops. And so, simply having the task of explaining to many neighbors and residents to support this task and what the benefits are is going to be much easier without opposition. So therefore, we are really glad to see this compromise being reached and support it, and hope that Palo Alto City Council does support this so this can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Winter Dellenbach. Welcome.
It's really odd to me to hear it being talked about, how if an accord isn't being reached with the business community and a few of you council members, that there's going to be, I can't remember the exact wording, so forgive me for that. There's going to be hurt feelings. And somehow that's meaningful. I'll tell you, I think out in the community right now, and I mean Palo Alto residents, there are a lot of hurt feelings going on listening to the discussions in the last couple nights about this, and people being pretty appalled by the direction that this is going. It doesn't seem rational. And I say that from not a point of being a Pollyanna about this. I said the other night that I've followed the business tax discussions. I know about the polling. I followed the discussions talking about the results of the polling. I'm aware of, the economics ups and downs and doing better in the recovery and on and on. I take that really seriously. But I'm also taking seriously what's going on right now. And that the hope with this business tax is just plunging. And when the slide went up that the city manager put up about, kind of how this would be, now we're down to 7.75 cents. We were at 11 cents the other night. Now we're at 7.75 cents. And y'all were hoping for 8 cents. And I saw the slide that affordable housing, 3.5 million a year. And, a unit of BMR housing costs, the estimate is about 700,000 a year. So that would be about 5 units a year, which is negligible. And all I can say to you is what I said the other night. Just stop it. Let's have a business tax, stay at 11%, 11 cents, and let's go for it. And I think the residents in this city will be much more willing to do that than the direction you all are taking. I really do. And I think we can stand up, and I think we can do this. Let's do it.
Thank you. So, whoops. Little echo there. We'll now return to the council, and I'll just offer just a couple more comments. First, I want to express my appreciation for the representatives of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group and the Chamber of Commerce who have gone through this with us in very difficult negotiations. And I think that we have come forward with an agreement that is higher revenue than what those parties wished this measure would be, and less than what many of us had hoped. But out of this, we have an opportunity to really move forward in a number of very significant areas. And in addition, we have an opportunity to come out of this with a united community, where the business community has been willing to not oppose a new tax on their certain of their businesses, and that they can take pride in the way in which we will be addressing some extremely important needs in our community. And in two of those areas, in addition to the breadth of public safety and progressive public safety measures that we're funding, the other two areas are where these funds will be highly leveraged for regional, be able to qualify our city for tens and even hundreds of millions of dollars in regional, state, and federal funds on both our grade separations and on our affordable housing. I think everyone involved in each of those areas understands that those projects are almost invariably ones where you assemble a range of funds and that the local dollars become extremely leveraged, and they're the backbone that is necessary to be able to qualify for those big dollars that are right now, because of new opportunities in both grade separation funding from the state and federal level and in affordable housing. We have the potential to really accelerate those processes in ways that we have not seen in past years because of new measures that have put new dollars, massive dollars on the table that we don't want to lose the opportunity to obtain. So on that note, I'd like to turn it over to my colleagues for additional discussion. Councilmember Cormack.
Thank you so much, Mayor Burt. Wow, 48 hours. Is this the same place we were? Could staff please put up slide 3 again? And after that, I'll be asking for slide 7. Great. Slide 3 has that word ecosystem. Those of us who've worked in tech know what that means. I think we all understand it from an environmental standpoint. But what I want to say about this, because when we began this years ago, one of the things we were concerned about was simplicity. And over time, this business tax has evolved substantially. And I think I want us all to acknowledge that what it's done is recognize the ecosystem that we are in. It is more complex than some of our neighbors. So I want to take a moment to just bring that to everyone's attention to the extent that comes out, as we're going forward. Second, I'd like to draw everyone's attention to the final bullet. I think some of my colleagues might not have heard this when the city manager mentioned it, but the gas utility is half of our revenues do come from the businesses. So I know people often say, the businesses aren't contributing. So I just wanted to highlight that and the importance of this gas transfer tax, which is part of the discussion tonight. As I mentioned earlier, so crucial to our climate needs. If you go to slide 7 now, please, for which I am truly deeply grateful. It really, it's taking I'm not sure if it's a village or whatever's larger than a village to get this to happen. Really calls out for us the opportunity. And I thank the mayor for explaining through, again, for people listening, the train crossings and the affordable housing and how it's not just that we, might be able to buy a few doors at $750,000. It's that our money will kickstart a process, and it can be at, a 10 or even, 100x opportunity. And down here where it says other service restorations, these are the things we thought about, right, with the community and ourselves for years during the pandemic. All of these things are things we want and need. And thank you. You can take that down. I I just have the highest praise for everyone who worked on this in the past 48 hours. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be a part of it, and I want you to know how much I appreciate what it's taken to get from where we were to where we are today. I will say I knew you could do it. I said that on Monday, and I'm very pleased to be here. I do want to take a moment and emphasize what it's like to run a campaign for a tax, because I've done that, and we will be doing that. If this passes tonight, that's what we'll be doing. And thank you so much to Ms. Nayak for stepping forward and volunteering. I've taken a note. I'll be in touch tomorrow. This is a hard job, and the lack of opposition is crucial to our success. And then I just want to emphasize again what Mayor Burt talked about in terms of, what's the environment we want to be operating in for these next 3 months. Again, my sincere thanks to everyone who's worked on it. I know everyone has let go of something that they cared about and hoped for, and come together. And I am very heartened by what I heard tonight. And I believe we will set this community up for a really stable, positive future.
I don't see another light at this time, and maybe the best way to move the discussion forward would be, I would move the staff recommendation if we have that ready to.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the clerk has a motion.
And I will second.
Okay. So let's take a moment to review what we have before us. And City Attorney, would you like to walk us through the elements of the motion?
Sure, happy to do that. So the first item here would be to repeal the resolution that the council adopted on Monday for a tax with a different structure. That has not yet been transmitted to the county registrar, and this first element would repeal that. The second item there is to approve placement on the ballot of the compromise proposal that the city manager walked through. And there are a couple of the highlight key features of that in the motion. The third element would be to also place on the ballot for the voters' consideration affirmation of the existing general fund transfer out of the gas utility, maintaining the status quo currently that applies. And then the fourth item would be to direct staff to return to council with a very slightly revised advisory spending resolution. And that would include some additional language that one of the speakers, Mr. Kostenbader, referred to, providing for additional fiscal reporting on tax proceeds and their expenditure. That item does not need to be placed on the ballot, and it's actually not on your agenda tonight, so it will need to come back at a future meeting. We would do that probably a week from Monday. On consent, the language changes is relatively minor. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I've really spoken to the issue. I just want to reiterate that both our chances of success with the voters are drastically improved as a result of the compromise, where we do not have opposition from the business community. And I think this accomplishes a great deal. We didn't get everything we wanted, but at this point in time, we got what we needed. So on that note, Councilmember Cormack, did you have any additional comments?
This is going to be a tough vote for some of my colleagues. I understand that. And, I have every hope and expectation and faith that we'll do what we have to do, which is take a moment and make the right decision for our community.
Councilmember Du Bois.
Yeah, excuse me, just to share some thoughts. So, during the last 48 hours, we went from the 11 cents CPI escalation, 1 million cap, to the staff proposal, 7.5 cents with 500K cap, 2.5% escalator. And, like I said, I started looking at the net present value of the tax over 30 years. So what's the value in today's money of the tax? And like I said, the escalator is pretty important. If we look at our current council proposal, it's the value of about 341 million over 30 years in today's dollars. The current staff proposal is only 197 million. And so, we go from 340 to 197 million. That's a difference of 140 million, or the difference is about 70% of the current proposal total. And so again, you can see the difference, particularly, just a few cents in the escalator. So we can all handicap the odds of the yes campaign to win, but there's been a lot of bluster. There's been a lot of who's going to blink first. None of us really know for sure. We did do 3 statistically representative polls. That's our best source of data. And the data showed strong support for a single measure. And now, it looks like we have a recovering economy. We had a very strong jobs report, decreasing inflation, the stock market's looking perky. And again, we're not really talking about this idea of putting 2 measures on the ballot. And again, the polling showed with 2 measures, it's pretty risky. I understand the argument about the current opposition that we've been hearing about. One other comment we had difficulty defining what it meant to get an agreement on whether the campaign would be supported or opposed. The chamber is a loose affiliation of a lot of companies that aren't in the chamber. SVLG has 12 members. So I appreciate what Dan and Charlie said tonight, but there's no guarantee that some companies won't oppose the tax. And there's no guarantee that somebody won't organize a campaign against a gas transfer, whether it's a company or individuals or the guy in the audience. Hopefully the commitments we heard from the 2 parties tonight means that their professional political consultant will stop working on this. At the end of the day, I'm concerned about going to all this effort to get $3 million for grade crossings, which is a $750 to $1 billion project, to get $3 million a year for affordable housing and for unhoused programs, where we have a potential operational cost for Project Home Key, which would be more than that. So it really feels insufficient. And, the question council members have to ask themselves is something better than nothing? Perhaps. But, for the amount of effort that is needed, I have to say it's a huge disappointment to go through all this effort and at the end of the day, not really be able to fund very much. So I would like to talk about the uses. I mean, this is a staff-driven process and proposal. I would much prefer to see $5 million a year going to unhoused programs and affordable housing, and $3 million to public safety. I think we could use more dollars that we could leverage in those areas. And so I would like to propose a friendly amendment that on 4, the advisory spending resolution, that we would adjust those numbers and have the 5.2 million be for unhoused and affordable housing, and then 3.2 on grade SEPs and public safety.
So I would support the increase for the affordable housing. I'm not sure that maybe we could get that, even that slide on the staff proposal on the allocations, which is only a staff proposal, right? Nothing
No, and even at that, I would like to clarify that these are just examples of investments. And so this is a reflection of the proceeds potentially from both the natural gas transfer as well as the business tax, which means that what's reflected on this slide goes beyond what's in that spending resolution.
And I guess I should just a moment ask the city attorney to clarify how defined we can be at this time on the breakdown of the uses legally.
Right. So you do have an advisory spending resolution that provides a true statement that the funds are for the city's general fund and that the council intends to spend them a third on these three key areas that we've been talking about for a number of months. What's proposed here is that we will add a sentence to that commits the city to do clear reporting each year on the amount of proceeds and then what those are spent on. And I really think beyond that level, you're going to want to be careful to respect the clarity that the proposed measure is a general tax. And there's not a lot of refinement or precision or budgeting that you're going to want to do with that this evening. Of course, I think there have been some just very general statements that sometimes tax proceeds, can be used in various ways to leverage the value of those. But I think you need to leave it at that in order to have a clear message to the voters that this is indeed a general tax.
So could we clarify? I'm sorry.
Well, let me just add that one other thing that has changed from what the city attorney described is that we were previously talking about the allocation of the business tax. Now we're talking about a combined allocation of the gas fee and the business tax. So Councilmember Du Bois, I am receptive to something along the lines of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on this line of questioning. So again, this slide is highly misleading. I mean, we have unions who are involved in this potential campaign, and it looks like we're committing 5.2 to public safety. I think what I heard you say is that the item we would get on consent would suggest it's 3.2, a third of the 10 million. Is that right?
So again, staff's proposal is to bring forward the revised business tax at that 0.075 cent per square foot per month measure, as well as the natural gas utility transfer. And when you look at the proceeds of those two measures combined, this is what that new proposal could be invested in. Obviously, from a council perspective, it's an annual choice, but this slide is looking at that totality of the proposal of the two measures and the revenues associated.
I'd like clarity on what's going to be on consent.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to like clarity on what's going to be on the consent in terms of the uses.
Sure. What would be on consent in terms of the uses would be specifically the communication around how business tax proceeds would be utilized, which right now is allocated a third,
which would be 3.2,
3.2, and 3.2, correct. Now, the additional $4 million that is reflected on this slide is reflective of the council's adopted budget from FY 2023 and the 2-year funding strategy that's been adopted by them. And should those ongoing revenues be approved by the voters, well, placed by council and approved by the voters, potentially we would be able to continue funding those one-time service restorations on an ongoing basis. Again,
so you're
just
saying,
an example.
But no, that's not what I heard you just say. You're saying based on our 2-year funding plan, the 4 million would be allocated as you're showing here, right? Based on that budget, we would need to put 2 million in public safety, or?
I did not say that. What I said is the current 2-year funding plan. This is how the funds are allocated based on council's adopted proposal. What the council chooses to do once that 2-year funding plan is over, and frankly, next year as part of the annual budget process, is their discretion as part of that annual budget process.
So the consent item, the spending advisory, will remain silent on the gas transfer, which it always has. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. It's unchanged except for one sentence to commit to reporting on receipts of the business tax and expenditure of the business tax.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be clear again that I find this slide a little, again, misleading here.
So we can, should we show the motion again? Just so we're.
Yeah, so again, I'm having a hard time supporting this. I'm not sure I'm going to. And I really would like to hear a lot more discussion about the idea of putting two measures on the ballot at the same time. Thanks.
Councilmember Philseth.
Yeah, I just have a procedural question. So if we approve this tonight, what happens next? Because we have a council meeting scheduled tomorrow afternoon too. So how does all that work?
So if you approve this tonight, that council meeting, I think, would not be held.
Okay.
That's a backup.
Okay.
If needed.
Okay, thanks.
Vice Mayor Coop.
So first, I just want to say thanks to the ad hoc committee as well as staff and everybody who worked on this. I do know that it did take a lot of time and effort. It's too bad that came to the last moments to come up with something. And this might even have come in as a result of pushing to the last moment, which is never a good way to do things. But it is disappointing. You know, this is very disappointing from where we started. It was about the residents in the city, and it was mostly communication and negotiations with the coalition when there should have been involvement with the residents as well. I don't think we gave enough credit to our resident voters for listening to what they might have wanted. At this time, I am not sure where I stand. So I'll just have to listen a little bit more and think a little bit more about especially what Winter said, 3.2 million, it's not going to build very many affordable housing. And if that is a priority for the city, it's going to be one droplet at a time, I guess. Anyways, that's, yeah, very disappointing. But thank you for all your work.
Great. I'll go ahead and I have a follow-up question and then a comment. So our current affordable housing fund, which is the result of impact fees and in lieu fees, do we have approximation of how many dollars per year we end up putting into that fund? So we can
See if we have that information handy.
Proportionate increase. And if you're digging that up, I could do a comment while you're doing that. So one of the other things that I just want to encourage all of us to reflect on is that over the last, a month and a half, as the council, maybe 2 months, as the council and the ad hoc committee had been really diligently attempting to negotiate with what was then the coalition opposing our proposed business tax. We had demonstrated, frankly, well, and it's on the record. We had demonstrated a real willingness to negotiate, and we were not really seeing reciprocal willingness for some time. And as a result of that, I think that the public and the press were perceiving that it was the city who were being more flexible and moderate and balanced in their approach. We now have a different circumstance where we have come to a mutual agreement. The business community has negotiated in good faith. They truly have. We have a compromise that's not what either side wanted, but that's the definition of a compromise. We know that from our polling that if we had a strong opposition, either of the taxes and certainly both of them would be in real jeopardy, probably at best a toss-up in the election if we had strong opposition. But importantly tonight, if we don't support the compromise, I think we all need to reflect on how that sentiment of swing voters and the press would change from our body being the ones who were most willing to compromise to that we had an agreement that was struck, and what if we didn't accept it, and what would the sentiments become at that time? And I think objectively that would change significantly and hurt our chances of success at the ballot box even more. And I think that's something we need to reflect on. We don't get to pursue what we would hope for. I think everybody on this council knows that I have been pushing strongly for a stronger yet business tax for some time. That in 2018, when I wasn't on the council, a number of us came forward with a citizens committee that had done extensive research and made advocacy to the council and really were the impetus to the council taking up this issue. And then since in the last year and a half, I've been very aggressive and strong in my approach to this, along with a number of colleagues. But one of the things we also have recognized, and why the council as a whole has been willing to moderate our hopes, is that we are clearly in a less certain economic time. Our pollsters and our consultant have explained to us that this is not a Palo Alto specific issue, that voter support for tax measures is significantly lower than it was in the past, and that it probably will be in the future. And that's a reality that we're facing, and that's a real factor in what we can place on the ballot and hope for success on in this year at this time. And that's the negotiation we've taken. Mr. City Manager?
Yes, if I could follow that, Mr. Mayor, our consultant was not able to be with us live this evening. So we did ask for a synopsis of what you just described. So I think it might be helpful to read for the record the perspective of our consultant. And this is the Lou Edwards Group. And this is, as the question was posed in terms of our current environment and the viability of the city's measures. The response was, as we discussed, the environment continues to soften as voters in communities of all socioeconomic profiles, including communities like yours, become increasingly concerned about potential inflation, current gas/food prices, supply chain issues, and other economic factors. The environment is also increasingly polarized, with views of right direction or wrong track, and government credibility generally diminishing across the board. Voters want to see leaders and stakeholders working together to solve problems, and any conflict will, as the city's polling previously showed, affect viability and the city's cushion of support. Hence, in Lou Edward Group's professional judgment, proceeding with the city's originally conceived business license tax proposal in the face of competitive, well-funded opposition will likely render one or both of the measures unviable. So if I could just continue with, since I have the microphone, to perhaps follow Vice Mayor Ku's comments regarding the funding for affordable housing and grade separations. I think it is fair and accurate to point out that with respect to our goals and our really long-term goals for both affordable housing and transportation and specifically grade separations, that even at twice the proposed amount, it would not be sufficient to meet those goals. And as such, I think we've long expected and really from the beginning expected that the city would be in a much stronger and will be in a much stronger position to advocate for additional funding when we have specific projects. You know, the council's certainly familiar with your grade separation evaluation process, and an understanding that once specific designs are advanced that have clear costs and funding available and funding gaps defined, that we will be in a much stronger position to request and advocate additional community support for that funding. And the same is true for affordable housing projects in terms of the clarity of location and size and what could be achieved for funding available. And on behalf of staff, I know that we have and will continue our commitment to continue marching down the path of assisting the council and the community in moving from overall conceptual planning to very specific project proposals to then being able to advance specific projects that can garner that community support. So with that, are we ready with that funding question?
And just following up on your point, so we have to do two things. We have to have those for affordable housing, we'll have to have those sites identified, which we already have a series of sites that where we have the Life Moves transitional housing site that the city has already committed dollars on. We have the Charities Housing site for extremely low and very low income housing, a very major project there on El Camino near the Fry's site. We have the 1 acre at the Fry's site, and then we have the analysis that's currently commencing on identifying the process by which we'd be able to use surface parking lot or lots in our downtown areas as affordable housing sites and the air rights. But in each case, whether it's that or the grade separations, tapping into those regional, state, and federal dollars requires a local share. And that's what this provides and the leverage. So Ms. Nozay, do you have a ballpark on what is our current funding toward affordable housing from the two sources we have?
Sure. Staff has looked back not very far. I believe we were able to find 2020 records perhaps. And we, between the two funds, collected less than $1 million, so about 800,000.
In each year or those?
Right, in each year.
Each year.
Yep,
so
between both funds.
Compared to what we currently have in revenue, this is about a tripling or more. That's actually a greater difference than I realized. But it points to the fact that the leveraging impact. I spoke with the board chair of Charities Housing about this very thing, but they, frankly, as they acquired the Sobrato Mike's Bike site, we were so excited, but they made clear, but they don't have the dollars for construction yet. And what typically happens, it's a combination of philanthropic dollars. We have regional dollars, state dollars, and federal dollars, and they have several of those buckets that they're able to tap into. But the local share is the way that they leverage and can get those additional dollars. So it's really, I think we all know it's inaccurate to talk about how many dollars would be directly or how many units would be directly built from these, because we're talking about highly leveraged dollars. And that's what the impact is. And I think we all understand that. And I hope we won't make those arguments that just aren't the way we do affordable housing. Council or Vice Mayor Coop.
So I appreciate, Mr. Shikata's explanation. I do hear that there are going to be monies coming in and so forth, but it is very evident from what we have experienced in the past that in order 80% is going to be something that 80% AMI, area median income, is going to be something that we have to do ourselves or county has to do. That's what has been happening. The 525 East Charleston, the Wilton Court. I mean, that property, the acre that we have at the former Fry site, even a developer that comes in to put in affordable housing and that they can claim 100% affordable, they're 120% AMI, which is almost market rate. So when it comes to talking about affordable housing, it is not going to be the developers coming in to do it. They're going to give us chop change and it's not going to be enough. And it's going to be 1 bedrooms where families cannot be in when they need 2 or 3 or 4 bedrooms. So we can rationalize and make ourselves feel better with the things we say, but at the end of the day, this is not enough. But before I turned on my light actually to say, but I did want to address the affordable housing bit. What I did want to say is, since the coalition was going to spend so much money opposing this tax, will they donate some money towards the campaign of moving it forward? Was that negotiated?
So our understanding is that they have agreed to not oppose, but not support. I will say that, or maybe City Manager Shikata can share that my understanding is that the Chamber of Commerce separately will be looking at whether they might be willing to actually endorse the gas transfer fund. They have not made that commitment. And I don't want to misrepresent that, except that they, my understanding is they've communicated a willingness to look at that issue. Mr. City Manager, is that correct? And I also had a question on the opponents had engaged a campaign consulting firm, and do you have any status on that?
Sure. Let me start with that. To confirm the earlier discussion that we have been informed that their consultant will be disengaged subject to the approval of the proposal before you this evening. So that resource will no longer be available in terms of any opposition. And then back to the question of support, I think it would be fair to say that in the case of both the Chamber of Commerce as well as the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, that we have discussed the potential for them to invite their members to individually support the either or both measures. And at this point, again, recognizing how intense the last couple of days and beyond that have been, suggestion has been to come back to that question over the next perhaps couple of weeks, as they say, once the dust settles, to enable all to take a step back and recognize the value of what is being proposed and ultimately left to the wisdom of the Palo Alto voters.
Great. And I should have, I'm sorry, noted one other thing, which is there was a third partner to the coalition, NIOP, which is the Trade Association of Commercial Property Developers. They have also in writing, as my understanding is, committed to not oppose the ballot measure. Council Member Cormack.
How far we have come, truly. I mean, I'm just reflecting on the past couple of years when there was opposition to any business tax at all. So I want to acknowledge Councilmember Du Bois's concern about putting two measures on. And I get it, and it's there. I think the strength of the natural gas transfer, it can be communicated pretty clearly. No change in rates, business pays half. We use it for the following three things that Dr. Nozay went through before. So I want to acknowledge that it's a risk. That is a risk that I think we can take on as a community. Very few people I've spoken with are concerned about that one. So I personally am willing to work, on both of these, given this. And now I realize that, unfortunately, I'm going to have to up the ante a bit on my colleagues, because I think it's going to be an awful lot easier for the business community to support this if we have a really consistent message. So I'm just going to add that as you reflect on your vote this evening, that it is far more likely for us to have success at the ballot box and for us to be able to bring these partners right hip to hip with us if we can also come together. I realize that it's a lot to ask, and it's been a bit whipsawed. I think intense is probably an understatement, and I've only seen it from outside. So I'm just going to add that to the list of things you're considering when you take your vote this evening. There are times for protest votes. We've all done them. But tonight, it will matter a lot if we can come together, because I think it will get us support from the people that you all have been working with.
Councilmember Du Bois.
Call the question.
Okay. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Actually, Mayor, can we ask to split the vote?
Councilmember Du Bois, Councilmembers Stone and Tanaka have requested to speak now.
Okay, I'll withdraw. There's just a lot of talking going on.
Well, and I was awaiting hearing from council members who hadn't spoken but weren't putting their lights on. Councilmember Tanaka.
Can we split the vote?
Pardon me?
I'd like the vote to be split. The motion.
Well, first, you haven't said in what way you'd like it to be split.
Have two separate.
You have to be more clear.
Vote 1, 3, and 4 separate from 2.
I believe 2 and 4 go together. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, and I think that for, let's see, 3 is the resolution on the gas. So the question is, we have certain council members who see these as inseparable in their decisions.
I believe that the mover and the seconder intended the staff recommendation, which is that this is a package. And so I believe in that spirit, they should not be split because they're intended to come to be adopted all together. If council were not to approve by 4 votes this package, then there would be opportunities to make individual motions on these items.
Okay, thank you. So they, as proposed, they're not separable.
Okay, that's all I had.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay.
If I might just clarify one thing, when you had asked me about the impact fees very, very quickly, just so that the public record is clear. Staff looked up an anomaly in the history. So we did look up in those past years in about 2020 about like I said, $800,000. But most recently, there was about a $4 million payment. That was a very specific payment associated with the Maybell development, and obviously not
You mean the NV cap or no, Maybell?
the Maybell.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Back,
the Maybell development. So I just wanted to be clear, if someone were to look at our financial records, there was a one-time large payment specifically associated with that development. But obviously that's an anomaly within the data.
Understood.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and just wanted to give appreciation to the ad hoc and staff for the continuous work on this. I think I feel probably like a lot of people, not only at this dais, but in the community, not happy about where we're at. I do think the 11 cents is a fair rate. But that being said, I think Councilmember Du Bois's point about is it better to have some tax than none at all is an important one, and that's one I've been thinking about over the last couple of days, anticipating whether the back and forth would be successful or not. And I think my position has evolved to today. I think, and I appreciate the city manager giving the update from our consultant. I had the opportunity to speak with her this afternoon, and yeah, I think it was made pretty clear from her training and experience doing this kind of work for a very long time. If we were to move ahead with the 11 cent tax, it would be flip of the coin at best, but still the likelihood that we would lose on that was very strong. And I think including the utility transfer in that would have made it even that much more difficult. And it was at least her expert opinion that if we had no opposition from the business community, that it would be highly likely that the business tax would pass. And I think without having to be concerned about that oppositional campaign, I think it makes it much more likely that we're able to pass both. And I appreciate Director Nozay, how you've been able to represent to us what can be done with that money, and the conversation about how we would leverage those funds has been helpful as well. So I've struggled between sort of my principled position here of believing that we passed a fair tax on Monday, and one that would do a lot of good with the likelihood of that actually being passed or not. And clearly we can do a lot more for the community with where we're at now, with where we would be if we pass this, than nothing at all if the 11 cent tax cannot pass. And given that school starts tomorrow in Palo Alto and a bunch of history students will be going back, it reminds me of a history quote: "Politics is the art of the possible, the attainable." And that's, I think, where we're at tonight. I'm again not happy with this, but we're working with the art of the possible. And I think this is something that is not only possible to be passed, but is very likely to be passed. Whereas I think the 11 cents, given what I was told by our expert consultant today, and the city manager confirmed, seems leaning unlikely, if not a jump ball. So I think it is one of the harder votes that I'll be taking, but in the end, something's better than nothing, and I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you. And I think on that note, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Burt,
Yes.
Councilmember Cormack,
Yes.
Councilmember Du Bois,
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka,
No.
Vice Mayor Ku,
Yes.
Councilmember Stone,
Yes.
Councilmember Filsa.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
Well, thank you to everyone involved. I want to again thank the Business Coalition members who have stepped forward to do what I think is going to really benefit the community. And thank you to my colleagues and our staff and the members of the public who have all worked hard to get us this far. Now we need to work on a very see a community grassroots effort to help this cross the goal line. And on that note, I think our meeting is adjourned, and special meeting, we don't even have a need for council comments, right?
That's correct.
We've commented.
We
enough.
heard from you on
We've
Monday.
commented
You'll have
enough.
another
Thank you.
chance next week.
All right.
And to confirm